Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Global Supply Chain Classroom's website on incorporating sustainability into supply chain management education in a global context. In the recent few years, the topics of supply chains and sustainability have become the forefront in the minds of global business leaders. Today, we are very fortunate to have a group of leading supply chain and sustainability educators from around the world to discuss how supply chain education programs are adapting to industry's sustainability needs. I will introduce them a little bit later. The Global Supply Chain Classroom, or GSCC, is a leading knowledge platform for global educators, professionals, and academic institutions established with the mission of creating sustainable global supply chains through education. We believe the next generation of supply chain leaders needs to prioritize sustainable business and develop innovative solutions. We are ready to champion global cooperation to promote supply chain sustainability. We've been developing education programs and facilitating academic cooperation between developed and developing countries in the field of logistics and supply chain management for over 20 years. We've established globally recognized standards for logistics and supply chain education, and we deliver a wide variety of programs through innovative models. What you see is just a sample of the kind of programs that we offer. We have both postgraduate certificate programs, which teaches supply chain practices through different regions of the world. We offer a series of webinars and everything from Lean Six Sigma training to full bachelor degree programs that we offer throughout the world. We're also offering a first of its kind supply chain student competition. This competition is called a Global Sustainability Supply Chain Student Competition. It's done with our partners at ICTD, which is International Center for Transport Diplomacy, supported by FIATA, the Federation of International Freight Forwarders Associations, and endorsed by the United Nations Group of Friends for Sustainable Transport. The goal of this competition is to bring students from around the world together to solve global supply chain challenges and contributing to UN Sustainable Transportation, Sustainable Development Goals. The theme we have is thinking global, acting local. The registration has been open for this competition and is open until September 24th. We're expecting over 50 teams to enter this inaugural year. We have students teams from around the world that's entered already, including from Central Asia, Europe, North America, and China. I encourage you all to visit the website, supplychainsdg.org, for more information, learning resources, and free courses. The competition's educational component encourages students to learn about supply chain sustainability with free courses and posted resources on the website. One of the courses shown here is the Fundamentals of Global Supply Chain Sustainability. It's a 6-hour program being taught by 10 different professors from around the world, and it's available for free on our website. We also have a course on readiness training to help students that are not sure if they're ready to compete on a global scale on this type of competition and not understanding how it really works. We have a course on that as well that goes through the steps on how to prepare the submissions and what the requirements are. So our goal is to make this truly global event with participation from around the world, because supply chains affect us all, regardless of whether we live in emerging or developed economies, and we invite all students to participate. Also, we're organizing a number of events for the World Sustainable Transport Day. which is including this webinar as part of those events, to accelerate the transformation of global supply chains towards sustainability. At the end of this webinar, we'll be developing a set of recommendations for supply chain sustainability education, which will be presented to the United Nations on World Sustainable Transport Day. Participants with the opportunity to provide input toward these recommendations. Now, today's webinar is going to be very interesting, thanks to the efforts of our two co-chairs, Dr. Ellen Touchstone, Associate Dean for Responsible Sustainable Business Education, International Business School, Suzhou, Xi'an Jiaotong Liverpool University. We also have Dr. Haozhi Chen. He's the Walker Professor in Logistics and Supply Chain Management and Interim Chair of the Department of Supply Chain Management, Iowa State University. And we also have a wonderful panel with Dr. Shawat Ibrahim from American University in Cairo. We have Dr. Lujie Chen from Xi'an Jiaotong Liverpool University. We have Dr. Scott Grahl from Mississippi State University. And we also have Dr. Christian Blanco from the Ohio State University. And our co-chairs will give them proper introductions for this esteemed panel. Now, next, I'm going to pass the microphone off to Juliette Passer. She is a founding member of the International Center of Transport for Transport Diplomacy, our partner for the Global Student Competition. Juliette?
Yeah, I apologize. Little technical difficulties here.
There you go.
Let's see, I'm going to try to share. So good morning, good evening, everybody, participants, distinguished colleagues. I'm very honored and grateful to give you a very quick overview of what we're doing up in New York. Let me try to share my screen. PowerPoint presentation, here we go. I'm not in my office, so I'm just looking around at a different computer. Can you see my screen? I'm not sure that this is working.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, excellent. So I wear many hats in New York. I'm a practicing attorney. I serve on a number of boards of directors, and I also teach at Stony Brook University, which is a flagship research institution on Long Island for the State University of New York. And I teach a variety of courses, mostly sustainability, human rights, and international law. So we're really excited. Today, I'm going to be representing our Center for International Diplomacy. We're based in New York. It's a non-governmental organization. I guess the equivalent would be the nonprofit organization by US standards. And we have just completed, as many of you may know, we have just completed a week of the second most important event at the United Nations, which is the High-Level Political Forum. And we were very excited to have an opportunity to announce our partnership with the GSCC. We're really looking forward combining our forces. So I'm going to give you a very quick overview what International Center for Transport Diplomacy does. We are really a leading institution focusing on transport within the SDG framework. And we have 6 priority areas that focus on many different activities, the most important of which I will tell you about today, which is most relevant, is the human resource development and sustainable education. And because my team and myself, we have more than 20 years each individually, if I'd be completely upfront, more than 30 years, but I don't want to talk about numbers, in the sustainable transportation and logistics. And of course, you really cannot talk about global supply chain without adding global logistic and multimodal transportation. So one of our priority areas is to develop a brand new curriculum by creating a very integrated and unifying curriculum focusing on everything related to global transportation and logistics, from the UN conventions to training next generation of executives for multimodal transit corridors. And we're very excited. We've been working at this project for quite a few years. We have a textbook. We're working on a 5th edition. And again, we were really excited about our partnership and the competition, because I think it will really bring a lot of students and academia and professors such as this distinguished panel and the audience together to look at the transportation in a bit of a different way. So again, not to dwell too much on the UN, but UN has more than 560 treaties, and 64 of those instruments are related to transport and logistics. And what we have done, we have really created a curriculum that starts with the universe of the UN, international agreements and conventions, and then of course goes much more into the details of what executives, whether it's the government officials, diplomats, executives who are involved in logistics sites or representatives of customs authorities around the world need to know. They need to have much more of a global view, not just focus. The way we have it currently is that each mode of transportation has their own conventions, has their own guidelines, has their own standards. So there is really, if you're an expert in maritime, you're probably not an expert in aviation or railroad, but you really need to be, because everything is now global and logistics are completely multimodal. So this is what we started with. We started with the SDG 4, which is educational, and we focused on creating this transfer diplomacy to really train the next generation of executives, professionals, professors, students. Transfer diplomacy basically covers touches just about every one of the Sustainable Development Goals. We have identified here the most relevant. And this is why we were very excited to introduce transfer diplomacy at the United Nations High-Level Political Forum, just to tell our diplomatic community what we have in mind. So as I mentioned, we have developed a textbook, and we have developed a variety of courses and programs. I happen to serve on the Assessment Council and a number of other curriculum development committees at my university. So most of our courses are modeled on the US educational system, but we're very flexible. And we have 3-day condensed executive education course. We have 7 days course with practical exploration of United Nations in New York, excuse me. And then we have full semester and actually full academic year programs. We're always looking at new opportunities and developing new products. But I think the idea of transfer diplomacy, its time has come. And based on my practical experience of working in the representing major multimodal companies and working in transportation area, you really need to have a very broad base knowledge now to be able to work with the supply chains and transportation logistics globally. So this is a very quick overview of transfer diplomacy. Of course, I would be happy to discuss it more. And thank you again for the opportunity to tell you about our new and exciting curriculum.
Thank you very much, Juliette, for that wonderful presentation. It's very interesting, and we look forward to working with you on all these programs and other programs that I'm sure we'll be developing together. Now I will pass the webinar off to our wonderful co-chairs who will take it from here. Haujo and Ellen, you can take over.
Okay, so Ellen, let me start. So it's my great pleasure to co-chair or co-monitor this session, because Dr. Ellen Touchstone is not only an academic leader in China, but also she's a celebrity in China. So, let me introduce the two of our distinguished panelists. One is Dr. Scott Graw. So Dr. Graw is a longtime colleague and friend of mine. He is the Dean of the College of Business at the Mississippi State University. So Dr. Graw is not only a well-recognized supply chain scholar, he also held leadership roles both in industry and in university settings. So he worked with Fortune 500 companies before, and then he also held different leadership roles at different universities. So I believe he has some very unique insights and perspectives on sustainable supply chain management. And then the next is Dr. Christian Blanco. So he is assistant professor in operations management at the Fisher College of Business at The Ohio State University. And then Dr. Blanco's research interest is mostly on sustainable operations management. And then he has published in some of our very best journals. And then he is among the first scholars in our field to apply text analytics in sustainable operations management. And then he has taught sustainability-focused courses at both undergrad and graduate level. And then previously, Dr. Blanco was part of the research team studying low carbon energy at UC Berkeley. So I'll turn it over to Ellen.
Hi, everyone. Ellen Touchdown. Before I continue, Chung, could you put up the original poster that you had the screensaver instead of this? Yes, Chung, can you put up the original poster or the original screensaver? Super. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so yes, I have the honor of introducing the other two panelists. Okay, so I'm going to start with Dr. Sherwat Ibrahim, and she is one of my new contacts when I was in New York City the second week of June at the PRIME Global Forum, PRIME being Principles of Responsible Management Education. Our business school, International Business School, Suzhou, is one of the champions of that group of business schools who have signed on to the UN Global Compact. And we are educating the business leaders of the future. So I was very happy to be in several discussion groups with Dr. Ibrahim, as well as to seeing her in action on one of the panels. So when we were planning this, I said, yes, she needs to be on this panel for various reasons, including she is associate professor at American University in Cairo, as you can see from the poster. She's also a visiting associate professor at Princeton University. She received her master's and PhD from Stevens Institute of Technology. And she actually is the partner and senior consultant at an innovation management consulting firm out of Boston called Innoveti. Sherwat, I hope I pronounced that correctly. And within the PRIME organization, she is actually the chapter chair of the Africa chapter. So I wanted her in this panel to bring the African perspective and maybe more of the global South perspective. She also serves on the advisory board for the Center for Applied Research and Innovation in Supply Chain Africa. So we are very honored to have her here. Of course, she has many publications and is an esteemed scholar also. Okay, so welcome, Sherwat. The second panelist I'm introducing is Dr. Lujia Chen. Her English name is Sherry, and she is one of our rising stars at International Business School, Suzhou. She is a very accomplished researcher with many publications in the top journals in her field, as well as articles in the Harvard Business Review. And as I said, she is a rising star. So she was appointed as an associate professor at our university. And within 2 years, she was elevated to senior associate professor. So she is quite a mover and a shaker. And she specializes in sustainable supply chain. So I wanted to have her here. I did want to note that our university, Xi'an Jiaotong Liverpool University, we have multiple campuses. I am in the, Sherry and I, Lujia and I are at the International Business School, Suzhou, which is in the Suzhou Industrial Park campus. And we have a postgraduate supply chain program. We have a new campus within our university in Taicang, which is about an hour away from here. If you think of Shanghai and Suzhou, Taicang is kind of the apex of the triangle. And it is a new type of entrepreneurial college where all of the colleges or the schools within the larger unit or the larger college are sponsored by industry. So we have the School of Intelligent Finance and Business, and within that school, we have an undergraduate program in supply chain management. So there are various colleagues of Lujia from International Business School Suzhou, as well as our Taicang Entrepreneurial College, who have logged in and who might want to tell us more about what we're doing in terms of sustainable supply chain. Okay, back to you, Haojie.
Okay, so let's start our interesting conversation today. So I want to start with some very general questions, and Alan, please feel free to jump in. So I want to ask, this question is not specific to any panelist, so it's a very general question. So compared to other fields in business, why supply chain management education is especially important to government and companies' effort in sustainability? So any panelists, please, if you have any comments, please join in.
Well, I can take a first stab at that. Haojie, I think one of the things that makes supply chain education in particular important is because it has the ability to span organizations and geographies. So when you start taking a look at supply chain and supply chains, whether it's related to sustainability, relationships between countries, relationships between organizations, you have to take a step back and take a look at how organizations, entities, and even in a lot of cases, countries are working together. A lot of times, if you find a buyer-supplier relationship, there may be some sort of a purchase agreement involved. There may be treaties involved. There may be various other things that you got to take into consideration. So when we start talking about moving large production facilities to other countries, or we start talking about bringing production facilities back into one particular country, that not only has an impact on the company that you're looking at, but it impacts labor in the current country and the country that you're moving from or to. So there's just a lot of other factors that are involved when you make some of these major supply chain decisions. And I think it's important as we educate students, executives, whether you're talking about executive education or your traditional undergraduate education, we as supply chain scholars have the ability to really push students and executives to think a little bit broader about the overall impact of the decisions that they're making.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other panelists want to join in? Yes.
Hello, good morning or good evening. Thank you so much for having me here. It's an amazing privilege and honor to be part of this. Yeah, so thank you, Scott. Yeah, I definitely agree with what Scott said. And maybe to add to that, I think if you sort of put on the hat of sustainability within supply chains, you're also challenging yourself to push the boundaries. So you could come up with very creative solutions that you may not have thought about if you only focused on the more traditional supply chain strategies. So for example, we already have a very rich literature on robust or resilient supply chain, but carbon emissions within the supply chain is something relatively new. And if you're sort of not innovating on that front, you could find yourself in two positions. One, you could miss out on future opportunities to pivot. And two, you could be facing greater scrutiny in the future and not being able to respond to maybe market or regulation in time, making it more costly within your supply chain. So I think these two things can really sort of encourage or motivate supply chain managers to think about more creative solutions if they put on another or add on another dimension, which is sustainability.
That's awesome points. So Sherry and Sean.
So on top of that, also is like, if you look at governance for sustainability reasons, it's going to becoming very difficult for you to stop measuring that at the doors of an organization. We live in a very highly disintegrated, value proposition where finance and business model innovation is dissected, right? So before you'd have an idea and then you would make it your company, but now you can have an idea and you can raise the funds again through multiple sources. So unless you really take a bird's eye view or a supply chain management view where you check for scope 1, scope 2, scope 3 in terms of reporting and governance, we're kind of like focusing only on a very narrow part. So I think it's very timely and very, I think it's the only way actually to do so. So, but biased again, right?
Thank you. And then actually, I will go back to what Dr. Grau brought up earlier. He mentioned international collaboration is very critical for making a meaningful impact on sustainability issues. So my next question is, so what role can schools, universities play? And then what do you feel that college students can play a role in the sustainability effort?
Well, I'm happy to jump on that one again. So from a from a university standpoint, and again, I know we'll probably get into this a little bit later too, but it's making sure that we've got sustainability really incorporated within our curriculum. And when we look at business schools, particularly accredited business schools, if you've got your AACSB accreditation, we have to understand that the curriculum is driven by faculty, but should also be informed by what's going on in practice as well. So taking feedback from business leaders, government leaders, and faculty to really make sure we've got some level of sustainability education incorporated within that curriculum. We'll talk later about how to incorporate that, but just making sure that we've got that, I think, is important for universities to understand. From a student standpoint, I'll be honest, I'm a huge believer in experiential learning. One of the things that I like to see is, when we start exposing to students to, the impact that supply chain decisions have on corporate sustainability and keeping supply chains going for decades down the road, I think it's important to put students in situations where they can see it in action. Whether that means establishing partnerships with companies, giving them an opportunity to meet with government leaders who are addressing policy concerns. But they need to see it early on, because if they start building their career without really incorporating and seeing things firsthand, and they're constantly just relying on what they're reading in textbooks and then in news articles without really dealing with it head on, it's always going to remain this, this concept or this idea that's always at arm's length, and it's not really going to be made real to them. So I think those are some things that we can do with universities and students.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. In fact, I want to add a follow-up with Dr. Gross' comment that he actually is very committed to providing experiential learning experiences to students. In fact, Dr. Gross and I have led American students to China to track different companies' supply chain from end to end. So that's type of effort, I think, as supply chain educators, we can contribute to the international nature of the supply chain, also international nature of sustainable supply chain management. So, okay, so my next question will be given to Dr. Sherry Chen, and then after this question, I'll turn it over to Alan for the next set of questions. So, Dr. Chen, the Chinese government has made commitments to reach sustainability goals. So in your opinion, have those commitments impacted how sustainability is taught at the universities? Can you provide any examples?
Yes, thank you for this question. Actually, I did a little homework for this question. I noticed that the Chinese government tried to adopt a program called Sustainability from Kids. So we can take Shanghai as an example. They launch different modules, even from the primary school as well as kindergarten, to help the students, the small kids, to learn about the sustainability principles. We can take one project as an example. It's called Green Schools. And the aim of this program try to provide more environment awareness and sustainability practice among students and school staff from the primary school. Then what they did is that they try to have some outdoor learning and field trips. Schools may arrange field trips to local parks, nature reserves, or ecological centers to expose students to the natural environment and learn about the local ecosystem. And they also want the students to do some sustainable practices. For example, how to do the waste sorting, recycle initiatives, energy saving measures, and promoting the use of renewable energy sources. Students are also encouraged to do some small experiments to recycle their home waste, for example. And they also encouraged to do some student-led projects to lead sustainability-related projects, such as creating a school garden, organizing eco-friendly events, or initiating some projects to raise awareness about environmental issues. Meanwhile, they also want students to involvement of the local community. So schools may regularly assess and invite the effectiveness of their sustainability efforts. Then I also take our school's efforts at like the MBA level, executive education level. We try to develop some executive education for some specific industry. For example, I have executive education module for the textile industry. And we noticed that the textile industry have a needs for sustainability objectives. So what we did is that we tried to develop a module to provide these MBA students or executive students from textile industry and help them to have a comprehensive understanding of sustainable supply chain management principles and practice, with a specific focus on their unique industry, with a textile industry here. And the module can be divided into different focus. For example, for the morning session, we try to introduce the sustainable supply chain management, and let the students understand the concept of sustainability in supply chains under the Chinese environment. Meanwhile, we also have some different modules regarding the different aspects of the supply chain management in textile industry, such as green logistics and transportation, circular economy and waste reduction, responsible sourcing and supply management, sustainable business practice and stake management. And meanwhile, we also want to involve the students to let them to discuss how they can contribute to the specific area, the sustainable management in textile industry. And we want to collaborate with them for the future case study. If they can send us the data from their companies, it should be a great benefits, not only for the teaching, but also for our research. So we did a lot in this area. Actually, I also published several papers based on the research, sustainable supply chain management in textile industry. And I think this module is quite successful, and the most beneficial aspect of this module is that we try to have a vivid picture of the sustainable supply chain management in the Chinese context, especially in the textile industry. And we invite different teaching methodologies, including lectures, case study, group discussion, guest lectures from these industry experts, and site visits to sustainable companies and facilities in China. We want to develop further sustainable supply chain management in other industry, maybe the transportation or the platform industry. We are not sure, but we will discuss with Ellen to motivate more modules. Yeah, this is my personal experience.
Great, Sherry, thank you so much. Since we do have some, quite a few people from XJTLU, either from the International Business School, Suzhou, or our types on campus, did any of you want to comment on this? You know, how the Chinese government's latest 5-year plan has led to more emphasis on sustainable supply chain industry needs, or also in our education?
Yeah, actually, Chinese government tried to promote this, but for the research field, I think they did a lot. Regarding the National Nature Science Foundation of China, they have different, so they launched different programs to support this based on the Chinese government funding. And if you have this related research, you have more possibility to get the funds from the National Nature Science Foundation of China. I think some of our colleagues, I think they are also in this room, like Yunlu Zhang from the Taicang campus. She also did a lot for this program. And for the education goals, actually, to be honest, I didn't know too much, but I think some colleagues try to involve their research on this field in their daily modules, but we do not have a specific module called Sustainable Supply Chain for the master level or the bachelor level. We only have this for the industry needs, such as executive education, like 2 days, 3 days, but we do not have a specific modules for the whole program. Yeah.
Also related to that, and this speaks to XJTLU's fairly unique position as a joint venture university in China, Sino-British joint venture university. We need to meet the Chinese Ministry of Education standards, as well as the Quality Assurance Agency in the UK. And so at times, there's a lot of bureaucracy in trying to introduce new modules or new programs or change module specifications and things like that. So I believe we will definitely be incorporating much more sustainable supply chain into our curriculum, and possibly having a special, maybe even a master's program devoted to that. When I was online looking at what's going on in this area, I noticed that quite a few European universities in the UK and on the continent have special master's degrees in sustainable supply chain management, or they have a focus on that within their supply chain management master's degree. So that might be something that we would look into at XJTLU. In any of our other colleagues would like to say anything from the China perspective while you were here, while we were on this question?
Hi, Ellen, and thanks. Hi, I'm from JTLU Taicang campus, and really thanks for Professor Chen Sherry's introduce. So I would like to share a little bit our practice in Taicang campus. Actually, just as Ellen introduced, actually we have the undergraduate supply chain management in Taicang campus. It's really excited to know that the students really have the passion for the sustainable supply chain management topics. Actually, they are really care about their future career developments and the sustainable topic related the majors, and also the future directions is really attract the young talents. And we have the chance to involve with the industry expertise and some business practitioners from the different industry based whatever in Suzhou or Shanghai and the Yangtze Delta of Shanghai of China. And we have the chance, not maybe as ABSS, the executive education, but we have the chance to involve with them and to do some in-depth workshop and to talk about the sustainability, specifically focus on the supply chain management, and also involve the local regulators and policymakers in the workshop. Actually, to be honest, the regulators and the policymakers, they are really passionate to know about the sustainable topics, maybe because the difference between the Chinese market and the different situation and the development, the stages with a more mature market. So the whatever the local government or the companies, actually, they have the passion to know the sustainable topics. And actually the entrepreneurs in Chinese market, I think most of the local entrepreneurs here, they treat the whatever the carbon emission or the sustainability issues, they do not treat it like the pressure. They treat it as the opportunity to transfer or upgrade their current business. So that's quite interesting to know. And actually some of the regulators or the policymakers even contact me to would like to know more about the sustainability topics and to give them some advice to help them to design the intensive plan for the local enterprises, and not only for Chinese local enterprise, even for the foreign direct investment enterprises here. They would like to provide some tax the incentives for the enterprises or companies who are willing to invest more for their sustainability activities, or to get some certifications, or to do some sustainability report, such kind of issues. So I just would like to share a little bit practice in Kaisang. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yunlu. We're going to have to meet up in the next semester. Yes, and also I did want to put a plug in for the competition. XJTLU is fielding a team in the competition, and it's a jointly sponsored team from our postgraduate program in IBSS and from the undergraduate program in Taicang. So very exciting. So I'd like to discuss what are some of the trends that you all have been seeing or putting into practice in terms of teaching sustainability, sustainable supply chain management at your university or other universities. This is open for anyone to answer.
Maybe I'll start if that's okay.
Okay, great, Christian.
Yeah, so the two big topics I'm very, very interested in and I focus on are climate change. So climate change related risks and opportunities within the supply chain. So that covers a big umbrella. That includes physical risk. So you can think of how a physical disruption, such as flash flooding, heat waves, hail, severe weather conditions, can disrupt the supply chain and delay production or damage inventory or destroy real estate. So, and how do you pivot your supply chain in response to these issues? And maybe I also forgot forest fires, right? So something big in California and in Canada right now, very disruptive, not good for workers' health, right? So there's also a health aspect within that. So it's not just limited to disruptions, but also thinking about employees and how they can't travel, they can't go to work when there's a hailstorm or when there's a severe weather. So that definitely diminishes productivity. So that's one. So climate change under physical risk, but even under that also is something called transition risk. So the transition risk is sort of the notion that the market or a regulatory market driven by either institutional pressure or regulation is being driven to a low carbon economy. So what does that mean for suppliers? So maybe your focal company is not exactly exposed to this potential risk, but your supply chain is, right? So maybe the focal company is headquartered in somewhere where there's not a lot of regulation, but they're working with a buyer or a supplier that is subjected to this regulation, and that will trickle down in the supply chain. So we really have to think about this globally, right? So we're not isolated. Okay, so that's like sort of a big topic. Like I go into carbon accounting, I go into a little bit of how that's connected to financing, some of these carbon abatement opportunities. And the other one is, which is a little bit more new to me as well, kind of slowly going into research in this direction, is recycling markets and circular economy. So reverse logistics, or how do companies innovate on the business front to ensure control over the products and take care of it at the end of life. So instead of going to landfill, thinking about one, can we extend the life of the product? And two, can we maybe make more value out of it instead of putting in landfill? And that really goes through the entire supply chain, from sourcing raw materials, thinking about the design of the product. How can we design the product so it makes it easier to recycle or to recover, and then change it into something more valuable or of equal value? So these are the two broad topics. So climate change related risks and opportunities, and the other one is circular economy.
Great. Thank you very much, Christian. I think you need to change your parentheses to say the OSU. That's an American joke, everybody. The Ohio State University. Yes. Would any of the other panelists like to address that topic? What do you see as the trends in teaching sustainable supply chain management?
For us at the American University in Cairo with a V, we again, there's a lot of things you could do at multiple levels in the institution, and we need to realize that sustainability again is interdisciplinary in some sense, especially if it relates to technical environmental elements. So you do benefit if you belong to an organization that has, multiple stakeholders and multiple, again, talent where you can tap in, at a short, in an easier way. So that's one. And what really happens, and I think this is not typical to all African institutions, but the American University in Cairo, again, launched or hosted the launch of what we call Business Schools for Climate Leadership. It's an initiative that we followed the European model that took place in COP26. So you had the 8 top European business schools, including from the UK, Cambridge, Oxford, and INSEAD, and HEC, and again a group, and they actually did a lot of groundwork designing a toolkit, and they launched in COP26. And then through the Prime Network, we thought that given COP27 did take place in Egypt, and there was a lot of, again, focus, and there is still on climate leadership in Egypt. So we launched this one, and it's very interesting to see how the ideas and initiatives are much different than the European model. For example, because of the level of competition among the European schools, executive education is off the table, while because of the dispersion of all the African schools that joined in. So 6 African schools deans came together to commit to what do we do in climate leadership. So 2 from North Africa, my dean and ESCA, Lagos Business School, Strathmore, Stellenbosch, and Gibbs all came together in the room, again, physically or virtually, and they kind of committed resources and focused towards climate leadership for Africa. And funny enough, top of the list was how do we collaborate for executive education, right? So the priority list is different. There's still need for developing curriculum, and these toolkits are where the material comes from. And another way, so basically every school looked inwardly and said, I can do the climate finance part. The other one said, I can do the governance ESG. And the other one said, I can do the operations and supply chain. So this is kind of the interdisciplinarity that sometimes is needed to push things forward on certain sustainability topics. That said, again, being, belonging, and again, the school joined the Prime initiative back in 2014. So it's nice that when you join a school that already has that integrated in its DNA, you kind of just follow, and in your undergrad, you teach, you use simulations, you use gamification, experiential learning to bring all the issues at the table to the students. And then I like the model. I ran the MBA programs for a few years. So I bring the executive MBA members and show them the talents and the undergraduates so they can, have these discussions, and sustainability usually does come up at the top of those lists. One last thing I think that we do also nice is an internal competition for family businesses and entrepreneurs in the region, where you actually, it's called Move Your Business Forward. And it's an annual thing where companies, talk about their initiatives, and they end up either being in our executive education or executive MBAs. And it's that whole ecosystem that supports this whole way. Not as much specific as supply chain as the rest of my discussion, but I'll stop here.
Okay, great, thank you. Thank you very much, Sherwat. Would anyone else like to discuss the trends that they are seeing at other schools or at your own institution? Okay, then we will move on. I realize that it is difficult to find up-to-date textbooks on sustainable supply chain. Because of this, how do you go about identifying appropriate materials to use in the classroom? Anyone? Sorry.
Ellen, sorry if I'm taking like always. This question is very close to my heart. I always struggle. I have been searching for the textbook for a sustainable supply chain or even just sustainable OM textbook. There are a lot out there. So again, not to undermine sort of what's the resources out there, but I think it's still very difficult to find one that's sort of like a classic, right? So maybe this is an opportunity, right? So there's like number one, it's not yet out there, or maybe to your point, the landscape is moving so quickly. So maybe the latest and greatest in 3 years will be a little bit not as up to date or relevant, or because the landscape has changed. So this is where I think case-based studies, like case-based approach teaching becomes very useful. So I use a lot of cases, from the Ivy or Harvard, and there's also Michigan and Darden has good case studies on sustainability. I also create some of my own. So like I'm currently creating, for example, one case study with a local company here in Columbus, Ohio. They're called ADS, Advanced Drainage Systems. And they have set a 1 billion plastic recycling target by 2033. So, and this is very interesting because even ADS does not know what the solution is, right? Because this is like they're planning on it. So this is a great opportunity to bring in the classroom, right? So I'm always looking for these companies that have very ambitious goals and they don't know yet how to approach it. Maybe there are a few levers that they've identified. And this is an amazing discussion to bring in the classroom. And again, we don't know what the solution is. So the MBA students can use their creativity to propose solutions, and this can be a win-win, right? So we can bring this back to the company. So what are other resources I use? Research. I sort of try to make sure I'm up to date with what's the latest, greatest research out there. But there are also some research papers that are now sort of the classic in sustainability to motivate, why is it important? So from the old view of sustainability as sort of a cost or a compliance to sustainability is now a potential competitive advantage, or, moving the frontiers of efficiency in operations management. So I really try to make sure I attend conferences to look at presentations, because sometimes there's a big lead time in publication. So at first, imagine it takes about a year to write a paper, maybe another year through the publication process. By the time it comes out, it's about 2.5 years old to 3 years old. But at conferences, that's where you get, the latest and greatest. So sure. And then there's an opportunity to kind of discuss or brainstorm with the speakers. So that's how I kind of get inspired and bring that into the classroom.
It's wonderful. Any other thoughts on that?
I'll just chime in very, very quickly. So one of the great things, about the way in which we as academics tend to collaborate, we tend to be very open in sharing teaching material in particular. And so when you're faced with a situation like this, where there's not a lot of strong textbooks out there yet, emphasize yet, because I think they're probably in development and it'll come. I think it's important to share those ideas. I mean, to your point earlier about, heading to conferences and talking with your colleagues and so forth, sharing syllabi, I think is important. There's still a lot of really good articles out there, not necessarily research articles, but, look at, Wall Street Journal and Harvard Business Review and others that address the topic. So I think you can put together some pretty good readings and a reading list that can address both an undergraduate student population and a graduate student population. And because the way in which we address sustainability and incorporate sustainability into our businesses, it's constantly evolving and changing. And one of the nice things about putting together reading lists and updating reading lists is it does allow you to stay current and make sure that you're putting the most recent stuff in front of your students. So again, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of collaboration with other colleagues, because at the end of the day, from a teaching standpoint, it's for the students. You know, we're all working together to try and teach the students, and you know, the more we can collaborate and share to make sure that we're putting really good curriculum and really good content in front of the students, the better off our supply chain leaders of tomorrow will be.
Thank you so much, Scott. Any final comments anyone would like to?
Yeah, I want to say something based on my own experience. As I said before, I teach the executive modules for like textile industry for the sustainable supply chain issues. Actually, we do not have any specific textbook for this module. What we did is that we tried to find some related academic journal and research papers. And we also tried to find out some industry reports and white papers. So what you can do is that you can check for some industry specific reports and white papers on sustainable supply chain management published by consulting firms, industry association, and NGOs, for example. I think these reports are quite useful and helpful and highlight the best practice and the real world case studies. Meanwhile, we also try to invite guest speakers from the specific industry and reach out these professionals and practitioners working in sustainable supply chain management. They will have some insights into the latest trends and resources relevant to the real world challenges, and it should be quite helpful for these specific modules. These are my comments on this question.
Yeah. Can I follow up, Ellen? Sorry, one addition. I posted a link in the chat. It's actually, it's an archive of sustainability syllabi. It's not limited to operations management or supply chain. So there are some marketing in there and some finance, and but I think it's a great resource to start with if you're struggling to come up with a course. And these are sort of basically people submit their syllabus, and they have identified, you know, sort of these award-winning syllabi. And then the other one is actually at the recent PALMS conference, I proposed to create even a larger archive for people to share their syllabi so that we can, you know, diffuse best practices. So I think, but that effort is on the way. It's you know, it hasn't materialized yet, but hopefully it will be, so that there's even more resources for people to use.
Great, thank you so much. I'm very excited about that.
One last
okay.
one. It's like, sorry. So the PRIME network, the PRME, the UN Global Compact PRIME, the typical commitment to PRIME is that you basically submit a annual sharing in progress report. So you basically a SIP report, we call it, and every university talks again what they do in across their school. So it's not just basic curriculum, but a lot of it is focused because it's categorized in that way on curriculum. And if you are an institution, maybe regionally looking for something to do similar, you know, in Africa at least, we have those SIP reports posted for other African schools to look in what's happening there. And we're moving actually in PRIME to make it in a way that you can, you know, like a database or repository where you can pull out and just have a smart way to navigate the system. And it's an initiative that we're very proud of, and in PRIME, and we're bringing it to all the members.
Right. Yes, and actually related to that, so Sherwat mentioned that all of the PRIME signatories and champions need to submit a report every 2 years. And just recently for the champions for our cohort, we all submitted, what were they called, Sherwat?
The SIP reports, the champion SIP report? Or the champion?
The special, you know what I'm talking about. the blueprints, were they called something?
Yes, they were called. I recall something similar to that. Yeah.
Yes.
We're not champion. We're not, but you know, yeah.
Yeah. And we need to submit those in terms of research and curriculum and then partnerships also. So those should be available on the PRME website for viewing by anyone. You don't have to be a Prime member or a champion. Okay, great. So Haoje, I'll send it back to you.
Okay, perfect. So actually related to the textbook or teaching resource issue, I do have a question I really want to ask the panel, and I would direct the question first to Dr. Grau, because he's a long time college administrators in the U.S. Business schools, and then I'll ask the others to share your experience. So my question is, should sustainability be taught as an independent course, or should sustainability be incorporated into many different supply chain courses? So which, in your opinion, which approach is more effective, you know, in educating our students with sustainability topics? So Dr. Grau, I'll go with you first.
All right. Thank you for the question. So, I mean, and again, my personal opinion, it ought to be weaved into multiple courses, you know, throughout the curriculum. And that's because, so let's say you're teaching a course on transportation. You want to talk about sustainability in the transportation industry versus maybe you've got another course on warehousing or another course on purchasing. Well, let's talk about how do you incorporate sustainability in your purchasing operations? How do you hold your suppliers accountable for helping you meet sustainability goals? So I think, you know, in touching on and engaging and incorporating sustainability throughout your curriculum and multiple courses does a couple things. One, it keeps it, it allows you to think about sustainability as it relates to each issue. But the other thing too is the more you repeat it and the more as a student you hear, okay, this is important and this was important in this class, but then we also talked about it in this other class. And now I'm hearing it in this other class. And now we're talking about it in the capstone class. Then it becomes reinforced as something that you've got to take into consideration as a business leader. So I think it's really important that that we do that within the curriculum. Now, I'm not going to say, you know, we need to scrap all the standalone sustainability courses. I think there are a couple cases where those are important. So let's say you're at an institution, and again, every institution is different, but let's say you're at an institution where, you know, when you take a look at the curriculum, and if you were to pull, you know, the syllabi from your colleagues, and you take a look at it and you go, all right, we're not really touching on sustainability in any of these other courses. You know, as a faculty member, you can do a couple things. One, you can really lean on your colleagues to make sure they're incorporating it, which would be preferred. But if not, maybe there is the case for a standalone supply chain or supply chain sustainability course. In that case, you can talk about sustainability and how it would relate to each of those various areas. It allows you to accomplish the same thing. It's just in a more, you know, focused, you know, environment. So you can still address warehousing sustainability, transportation, purchasing sustainability, but it's just going to be in one supply chain sustainability class. So I think there's an opportunity for that. I also think there's a lot of companies now who are creating positions that are focused on sustainability in the supply chain by developing a course that allows you to dig in a little bit deeper on specific sustainability aspects of it. You know, might help position some of those individuals better for success in those roles. But it's a long way to say strong preference for, you know, including sustainability throughout the entire curriculum. But absent that, a standalone course is certainly, you know, not to be discounted completely.
I would like to just follow up on that, Scott. Recently, I was talking to Jo Meehan at the University of Liverpool, OLMS. She's the new director of their Center for Sustainable Business. And over the past few years, they have looked at they've mapped their curricula to see what is being taught about sustainability. They actually trained students to do this for their entire undergraduate, for all of their undergraduate programs and modules. And then they compared that to what the professors thought they were teaching or think that they were teaching related to sustainability. And it seems that a lot of coordination needs to happen in terms of if you're going to integrate sustainability across the curriculum, you really need to coordinate it among the different professors. Because, for example, some of the students were saying, you know, in last year, we had 3 weeks on the SDGs in this one particular class. And then in the next year, another teacher started us off as if we had no idea what the SDGs were, and we wasted a lot of time in that. So I think I would prefer integrated across the curriculum as the Associate Dean for Sustainability, but it does take a lot of organization to make sure that the students are getting enough new information in each of the different modules.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, Christian, I saw you raise hand. Actually, I was going to go to you next. So we have two high-level business school administrators give us their perspective. They believe it's better to integrate sustainability across different classes because they have to look at the course offerings, whether like you have the resources or not, what's more effective. But from individual faculty members, now actually, so Christian, you have taught standalone sustainable operations management class at the Ohio State University. So can you share your perspective, and then I'll go to Sherwood and Sherry. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, so I definitely acknowledge the add value. And I think also other professors that are teaching the quote unquote traditional courses like service operations or core OM, for example, students might ask them a sustainability related question, and it's important that they are familiar with some of these topics. But I also want to be mindful, right? I want to put myself in the shoes of my colleague who's maybe not a sustainability expert. And it could be, kind of like something to think about or be cautious that, they're an expert in healthcare or service operations management. And so sort of imposing that expectation on them may not be, very fair. So because, maybe they're not familiar with it. But of course, again, it's if you're sort of it's important to be ready, if you're not a sustainability person and you're teaching more of the core courses or traditional courses, your students are very interested, or many students are very interested in sustainability. I have the opportunity to teach both. I teach a standalone sustainability operations management, and I also teach the core MBA class. And in the past, I've taught the undergraduate course. So at the undergraduate level, it's kind of easy to infuse, sustainability here and there. But at the MBA level, I do personally infuse a little bit of sustainability topics as a sort of a way to advertise my standalone course. It's kind of a follow-up. So I say, hey, if you want to dig deeper into this, but I also want to acknowledge, right, that some of my colleagues don't really have maybe sufficient background to tackle some of these questions that some students might really want to go deeper into. So maybe being mindful of that, right? So we are all sustainability people here. So we think like it's super easy. We think about it intuitively, but maybe not all of our colleagues are on the same page or have the capability to do that.
Just addressing what Christian said, I was just having this conversation with Joe Meehan last night, so a third administrator from another university. Many of the colleagues at the University of Liverpool were also saying that, you know, they're not sustainability experts. And so they felt a bit challenged to integrate that into their curriculum. And so the administrators at OLMS are actually going to include sustainability training in their staff development and put it as a part of the workload. And she mentioned that, you know, carbon literacy training at a minimum, right? And carbon literacy training is something that we have been doing here at IBSS for the past 2 years, offering it to faculty and students, actually through the Prime working group on that. So it's excellent training, anyone who is affiliated with Prime.
Okay. I had the chance to restructure the MBA program when I was working with those. And one of the challenges we faced, and it's nice to have a program, you know, talking about Kristen in that level with you know what's there, is that you need to free up, you know, content or resources first. So one of the things the challenges we faced is like, to put something, you know, integrated like sustainability in what we teach, where do we take out? And you have to do it carefully because your faculty is there, the system is there. So basically we looked at the pillars where we have like our marketing department, our finance department, operations, supply chain, and I called it rotating the matrix. So instead of having, you know, every professor come in and try to integrate sustainability, we would create some kind of co-teaching models where you would rotate, again, you would bring the disciplines across, you'd have the pillars on top, and you go like sustainability, and for us entrepreneurship is a big one, and you know, regional development. So we'd have those there, and we'd begin a course with that title, and the catalog would allow for that, and then you'd have 2 professors teaching the course collectively. As an administrator, you have to worry about giving them the other half in their load, right? So you have to also offer another alternative for that, but it kind of worked, and co-teaching was there. Again, offloading some of the curriculum, really looking into the course, you know, outline of all your professors and ask them like, how can we revisit this? We have some kind of, because accreditation, we have some kind of scoring system where you kind of communicate when you teach a certain curriculum to what extent you do cover sustainability. So you can just look at those from those indices and say, okay, more of this, less of that. And again, it does need something at the department, you know, the program level to have this package nicely done. And we're not there by any means, but I'm just saying it was a good start. Yeah.
Thank you. And then Sherry, do you have anything to add? So if not, actually, I will follow up with a related question. And then both Alan and Christian touched on that. So it's not uncommon for business schools or don't have really qualified faculty members to teach, you know, sustainability courses or content. You know, as Christian said, you know, everyone here is an expert on sustainability. But in your opinion, how can schools improve their faculty's qualification or knowledge regarding sustainability, you know, in the most efficient, effective way, so we can provide students the best education on sustainability? Any thoughts on that? So, in other words, how to help your colleagues improve their expertise?
I'll jump in. So I think, I mean, sessions like this is a great example. You know, providing opportunities for you know, faculty to attend research seminars, to attend industry conferences, whatever it happens to be, in order to make sure that they're staying sharp, I think are important. Much like we would, you know, other conferences. I think one of the things that's important to understand is there's value in the focused seminars, conferences, and events, whether they are online webinars or, you know, regional or national, you know, conference or seminar. I think there's certainly value in that, and I think from an institutional standpoint, if you're committed to incorporating sustainability within your curriculum, then the investment to send interested faculty to these types of events is certainly warranted.
Thank you. Yeah, Christian, do you have anything to add? Not everyone is well trained, well prepared as you were. So yeah, you started very early to be interested in sustainability, right? So
yes, thank you. And also maybe it's good to hear from a junior faculty where we, very hard to convince a senior faculty who's not traditionally in sustainability. So I'm not sure actually how to answer that question, or maybe even further of, is it, whether in fact it is necessary. I'm thinking, again, maybe open discussion or kind of just like sharing thoughts, right? So, we have senior faculty who's focused on healthcare, OM, and sure, I think I can find some very interesting overlap between healthcare and sustainability. Health is, very important part of, pollution, less pollution, better health, or service. But again, yeah, it's a bit difficult, I think, to sort of, if you're the junior faculty, sustainability person, and none of the senior faculty is, into sustainability, it's a challenge. But at the same time, also, I think this is competitive advantage, right? Like, I think I can separate myself in the faculty because I offer something very unique, and it doesn't cannibalize my course. When students take healthcare or service, and then they take mine, they get a very completely different perspective. And it's up to them whether they want to mix and match and how they want to maybe think about integrating these two things. But maybe my only thought here is, I'll go back to my earlier one. Maybe the only way I would position it to senior faculty is that, hey, there's a lot of interest in sustainability among our students. If your student has a question about sustainability and you feel like, maybe, my senior faculty colleagues are very brilliant, very smart, but I'm happy to sort of, share some material if you feel like you want to sort of explore some of what the other perspectives are in sustainability. But I'm sure they will come up with, they can answer field questions in sustainability, but just maybe being mindful of that sort of competitive advantage, and not cannibalizing courses, as like Ellen kind of gave an example, right? So, 1 week SDG, and then the other course is also teaching the same thing. There's, and then it becomes a little bit repetitive, or like we could have allotted more topics in different spaces. Something to think about, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So anybody else want to add something? So if not, maybe we, in fact, I think all the panelists already touched on this before. So how to teach sustainability, sustainable supply chain management, the teaching method, what's the best teaching methodology? So Dr. Chen mentioned she engages with the companies, and then Christian also mentioned, he used case studies, actually real case studies, and also engaging with companies. So any other thoughts or sharing of experiences, in your opinion? So what are the things that really work really well when you teach sustainability topics? What are the things that didn't work that well? So welcome everyone, every panelist to joining. So.
I'd like to put in a word for simulations, and I apologize. It's late here. I've had a long day. It's graduation week, right? But there are some good simulations out there. There's one from a company in Shanghai, and they've approached us, and we've seen a demo, and we're actually thinking about using it in our MBA and in our executive education for sustainable supply chain.
Okay, thank you.
I also have one more to add. I do debates in class. So how does that work? So I pre-assign teams into topics. For example, and I give them a reading and I give them a side they have to take that position. For example, does remanufacturing cannibalize new sales? And then I force one group, you have to take the position of yes. The other group will have to take the position of no. So you might think like some students might intuitively go with one side that, they're, inclined to take a yes position, but by forcing them to go on the no position, they will have to come up with, logical arguments to say, yeah, what are, they're going to start challenging it, or what are the barriers to it. So even though you're really innately in favor of remanufacturing, they were going to think about barriers or counterexamples, and when is it not profitable? When does it not work? Another debate topic I throw in there is transparency sufficient, or can transparency improve supply chain sustainability? Right. So the most intuitive answer is yes, it does. But if you force a group of students to take the no position and hear the arguments, and then I have them debate, kind of like they prepare carefully, and I give them about 20-30 minutes to kind of like free flow and counter arguments and back and forth, it really gets the class going. So like, that's also very experiential, I guess. So yeah, so just something to consider.
Thank you. That's wonderful idea. So Christian, how many students do you put on each side, or it's one-on-one debate?
No, yes, thank you. Very, very good question. So I have about 30 students, and in my elective, I have about 7 weeks. So we have one topic per week, except for the first week. And then what I do is I group them in about 4 or 5. And then, so each week, 2 teams will debate against each other on a particular topic, and the rest of the students will sort of write a short response, a 1-page response, but still also forcing them randomly into a side, yes or no, right? Again, just by chance, you could be yes, and then it aligns with your perspective, that's great. But I also want to, you kind of like randomly assign them into the opposite direction, right? To kind of like know what the counter arguments are. I think that equips them really well when they go out there and they start to propose some of these projects. They know what they're going to expect to hear, or what are some of the challenges or potential barriers, and then they prepare themselves to answer them. So I think it's a very lively classroom. I really enjoy the debate base. So groups, it doesn't work one-on-one. It kind of gets a little awkward, actually. So, and what you want to do is, in the beginning, you want them to present uninterrupted. So for first, maybe 8 minutes, you give team 1, lay out all your arguments, and then team 2 will give all their arguments, and then they're taking notes, right? They're already getting ready to ask questions. The opposing team is already preparing questions to challenge some of the points. And then after the presentations go uninterrupted, so that's an important part of it, then they will start, I will ask each other, okay, team 1, what's your question on team 2? And team 2, what's your question on team 1? And then this will organically just like go back and forth. And that would already take 30 minutes. So
that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. I think we are all very interested in that idea, and then I think we will try to explore the possibility of applying that concept. So, any other sharing from Sherward or Sherry? So, any like teaching methodology. So, for example, Sherry, are you still there, Sherry?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah.
No problem. Yeah.
Think,
so,
Christine,
from teaching perspective, can you share your experience with us?
Yeah, I think Christine already have a lot of interesting stories sharing with us, and from my my personal teaching experience, I think it's quite important and interesting for the student to do some field visits. So organize field visits to some sustainable supply chain facilities or sites. It can provide students with some tangible examples of sustainable practice. I think it's quite especially interesting for these bachelor students who have not so much experience, work experience in this area. So if you can help them to do some field visits, then help them to understand this area more vivid. Meanwhile, I think it's also interesting to utilize some technology platform or simulation tools to help the students to know how to balance operation efficiency as well as environment targets. And I try to use them in my executive modules, and it's quite successful. These are my comments.
Thank you. And then
just real quickly, is anyone using or seeing anything in terms of AR or VR?
No, I didn't use AI. We only use simulation tools.
I predict that will be big in the future.
Yeah, definitely great ideas, and I'm really excited and happy to be here. You know, just listening to this firsthand and knowing who to go to if I need further information. Maybe I'll. So other than that, the ones that really work also is like guest speakers into the classroom. You know, I don't know, again, Zoom and before Zoom, you know, whether physically or not, they have these, and you have students prepare properly for these ones, especially if you design maybe even an assignment or an end of year project around them. Usually, again, students have to deliver that, you know, a project. So you have to maybe in the requirements have a sustainability element, whether one thing I also say, it's nice for our students to look like ambassadors of sustainability when they go into the private sector in the region. So, you know, just even if they come back empty-handed, I ask them to fill in that space and with what kind of discussions you had and put them on the spot if you really believe in it, or what was, you know, the reality check you had to go through compared to what we took in the classroom in terms of why sustainability is core to new businesses' competitiveness, right? So that kind of realistic reality check with the industry, I think goes a long way. It's maybe one of the most untapped, I think, resources, and maybe we don't measure it in terms of teaching sustainability the way a simulation would pop out, or that amazing debate example, but I think, again, it works. Also at the program level, I know we moved from that topic, but shortening the especially in MBAs, you know, the semester long education to take just one topic, I think, again, is another way that you can tackle this interdisciplinarity. So you maybe just designing the 7-week courses Kristen was saying for an elective. You know, if you want to offer many electives, you want to make them shorter so people get a little bit of a cherry picking. So that kind of design versus classroom, again, goes back and forth.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Yeah, how's it? I mean, the only other thing I was going to mention, you know, when it comes to, you know, teaching methodologies and teaching understanding, you know, so I don't teach any courses that are solely focused on sustainability, but, you know, I would always incorporate it into the courses that I taught. And one thing that I always had to make sure that I understood was not all students are coming into this class really understanding sustainability, and sometimes you might even get some eye rolls. Oh, sustainability, we're going to talk sustainability again. I'm tired of this. I hear it all the time. In some cases, you've got to convince them and show them this is why it's important. This is why it's important to businesses. This is why it's important to consumers. You can talk about the cost savings impact. You can talk about a lot of things. It's not just about environmental sustainability. Yes, that's an important part. Yes, that part needs to be taught as well. But there's a lot of aspects to sustainability that you can use to make sure that you really get your students bought into it, excited about learning the topic. But so I think you know, when it comes to just, and again, it's not a sophisticated technology, but I mean, it's just an understanding that when you go into the classroom, you have to understand who the students are in your class, understand if they are embracing sustainability in some of these topics, or if there's going to be some resistance. And I think one of the things that we do as instructors and professors is break down some of those barriers that allow us to reach those students and help them understand the material.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Actually, I do have a follow-up question or topic. So faculty members such as Christian teach sustainable operations management or sustainable supply chain management. but oftentimes, our students, the audience, as you said, Scott, are not equipped with the basic knowledge about supply chain management. So Christian, where is your class located in the curriculum? And then, so do you have a prereq for taking your sustainable operations management class?
Yes, thank you for that question. And maybe just to follow up on Scott brought up a really brilliant point, So one, it's an elective. My my sustainability course is an elective, which to Scott's point, right? Not everybody may have an innate interest in sustainability, so they will self-select, right? So the students who take my elective course are kind of already very interested in sustainability, right? So, but you're right. So the students who may not be interested in it, where will they hear about or learn about sustainability? I think I'm kind of in a unique position because I also teach the core operations management, which is the gateway to all the, supply chain, service, ops, and so on. So I get to infuse a little bit of that just naturally in terms of having to think about sustainability. But I do require my sustainable OM and sustainable supply chain course does require that they take the core OM and have some more background in supply chain because I think it builds up on it. And I think that's also a very interesting way to teach sustainability because one, the students are first introduced to the more quote unquote traditional or conventional supply chain management. And it's nice to kind of see sort of an extension, right? So that's how naturally I think this field evolved as well, right? So if you look at the history of it, maybe 30 years ago, nobody brought in the word carbon footprint in this, in the classroom. And then naturally, kind of started to come in. So I think there's sort of a natural chronology to it too. So that's my sort of personal take on it. But I think people can probably teach sustainable ops as a standalone. I do get a few students outside of Fisher, which is the business school. They're more industrial engineering and master's students who may not have an MBA background. I do allow some of them to take my sustainability course, even though it does require some prereqs. But this is only a case-to-case basis. But I do see that they struggle a little bit to appreciate some topics if they don't have enough background in the more traditional topics or like supply chain and OM.
Thank you. So anyone else has something to add? So my next question is a little bit big because, but I do want to cover that. So I believe all of you will agree, and in fact, both Scott and Christian mentioned their different opinions, even among students, again, towards sustainability. So I believe we all agree in sustainability, there are some very challenging or controversial topics to cover. So for example, just give a couple of examples, greenwashing. So even some of the well-known companies, even their website claims or financial reports claim they make a great sustainability effort, but still they're being disclosed for greenwashing. That's one area. Another thing is the challenge of sustainability investment is it's very hard to measure the returns. So, but for any companies, they want to achieve efficiency, achieve profit. So how do, when you invest in sustainability, you can't get financial returns right away. So how, when you teach those concepts, how do you tell students, how to do the balance between the efficiency, profit with the sustainability effort? So the bigger question is, how do we cover those challenging topics in your classes? So anyone is welcome.
Okay, maybe I'll take a shot. So again, remember, as teachers or academics, we try as much as possible to be relevant. If you really want to be a professor where students would connect with you, relevance is going to be at the forefront as you speak, and you have to actually send, as you move from class to class and you earn their trust and credibility, then you can maybe talk about that stuff. So of course, it depends, it's a very tightrope you have to walk. And remember, regulation in Africa is not as stringent as in EU, for example, if you're teaching the same course there, where they know that I can't do business without this. And I do get a sense of like, okay, we get it's important, we get it's, you know, something that's it's a global movement, we get the impact that it's going to maybe someday affect the way we do business, but today we don't have to worry about it. So some kind of those kind of you know, feedbacks that I get, and I open them up for debate, not in a formal context like Christian, but I leave it there, and I compare it to when TQM was a big deal, you know, 20, 30 years back, and no one believed in full quality management. So I say, like, you know, it could be a fad, it could be really consistent, it could be integrated in your organization. Where do you think it's falling? And I don't give an answer. I let them come up with what they believe is it's going to fall there. Also, of course, poverty and social, you know, issues in Africa usually take a front seat to climate and environmental issues. So I encourage students to focus on the social, the S in sustainability, right? So if you want to, you know, how does you're solving a problem, that's what businesses do if you really want a sustained competitive advantage, right? So in that sense, what kind of problem are you trying to solve? And you know, they see it's very entrepreneurial, the culture here in the university I work in and Egypt at large. So they see the most successful, you know, unicorns who are, you know, developing out of real, the ones who solved education, transportation, fintech. So these are the companies that are, you know, very highly innovative, very highly profitable, and the business models there. So I promote it under a very highly innovative way of doing business. And if you have a head start, then you'll be the one who leads the industry, that kind of talk too. So you got to talk the language. And again, if they're undergraduates, it's a different stance. And then they're executives in MBA and that really want to go global. So if they want to do global trade, how do they meet the standards? And with new reporting, you know, standards coming out, how's that going to affect their business? You just tailor and you navigate and you go about it. I have to say, being in supply chain is a very advantaged position because you have an eye on the downstream, right? We know, you know, transportation, last mile distribution, what can be done there in terms of sustainability. We have access to responsible sourcing, the back end, you know, the backstream. So, you know, if you're fortunate enough to have this kind of access to a lot of areas where, you know, sustainability/innovation interferes, then you can offer all these to your students and they start at least getting interested, whether they, you know, they take action or not, but they stay engaged. They're less skeptical by the time they graduate, I think, my course, but you know, you want to move from awareness to advocacy, right? That's kind of where we want to be. So I'll take a student who knows a little bit more today, but then you'd hope that 2 out of the 30 or the 3 out of 30 would become, you know, the small enterprise that's going to lead this new business innovation related to, again, sustainability. And with that, you know, modest steps, I think we get there, I hope.
Thank you. So anyone else?
Maybe I'll share a little bit of my experience. So it is challenging. For example, one large financial company in Columbus, Ohio, is asking Fisher to create an executive program to teach sustainability without, and this is their word, you know, without it being politicized. Okay, so this is, you know, and I think that's, and I think we need to be able to teach it completely from a value perspective. And then I position it as, okay, companies, you know, we're in the business school, so we have to think about it as responding to regulation, you know, or if there is some regulation, how does that affect our operations? How can we best respond to it? How can we be agile? How can we be flexible? So really, we're here to teach logic, right, and arguments. And the debate one is, you know, so the one way to kind of sort of really open up the floor for discussion and brainstorming. Another example I have, for example, we can even ask, you know, a debate question on a regulation. For example, should the SEC, the Securities Exchange Commission, require mandatory reporting of climate change? Yes or no? Debate. You know, so then it really opens up for, you're right, like, you know, now we're not, in fact, instead of shying away from the difficult or maybe sort of called controversial questions, we're embracing it. We're really trying to argue and understand what are the arguments on both sides. And this is really what we owe our students, to be able to give them the equipment and the logic to be able to argue whichever side they might want to end up taking in the future. But that's up to them, right? So, and then the other one is we have to be very technical. I think we have to owe it. We want to honor the sustainability leaders and researchers that have paved the way, that have put us a seat at the table. But we have to honor the technicality, right? So we want to, for example, to answer your question, how do we price investments and how do we value the environmental aspect of it? There is something called the internal price of carbon. So an exercise I do in class is you calculate the ROI for a particular project without the internal price of carbon. And then you do it again with the internal price of carbon that captures this environmental impact and compare the investment and how it looks like. So we have to be technical. That's how we gain their respect. We have to give them sophisticated tools that mimic or mirror our traditional and supply chain management classes. We have to give them technical tools in sustainability.
Thank you, Christian. Excellent points. I totally agree. Instead of shying away from those controversial questions, we need to help students, understand and then how to think about those issues with a critical thinking approach. I think Paul raised a hand in the audience. Do you have a question or comment?
I had a comment specific to how we're going to transmit the whole sustainability thing. I just did an exercise on Monday, one I've done forever. I teach at a college in Ontario, Canada, a transportation-based program. But I posed to them, prefacing that fashion is a very, very not nice industry for the world as far as sustainability goes. And something that I took from when I spoke at a conference a few years ago, a young lady came up to me and said, how can we become more sustainable as carriers for a trucking company? And I said, doesn't have to be a trucking company, it can be an ocean company. You get a call, a dispatch for 4 or 5 containers of blue jeans, or 5 or 6 truckloads of blue jeans to move across the continent or within the province, and you simply refuse to pick it up. And she said, well, that's impossible. And I said, you asked me the question, that's how you can become sustainable. And that's, of course, the extreme. And I posed that to the class. And then we worked backwards to business-wise, what is more reasonable? And when I get the question on why bother, because every one of my classes ends up with what's this mean to us? I simply say, you've got many things happening. One, our industry is going to be become more and more related to blockchain, or regulated by blockchain, or worst case, watched by blockchain. And that combined with social media can very, very quickly tank a company. And that's the way I pose it to them. So we look at the don't pick up any freight, which is the very, very extreme, to be ultra sustainable. I'm not exactly how you're going to pick it up, how you would pick it up anyways, if you want to be sustainable specific to diesel, etc. and emissions, but we go to the extreme and then we work our way back to something more reasonable to present day. All of that watched by under the purview of social media and ultimately blockchain.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. So let's see. We're close to the end. So I will actually target the next couple of questions to Dean Grau. So as the dean, because we talk about how to teach, what about the program set up for sustainability education, and also how to teach sustainable supply chain management courses, but from an administrator's perspective. So how do you view a sustainable supply chain program or class as a success? Or what are the key success factors? So, can you share your insight with us?
Sure, and I think that the question specifically refers to global sustainable supply chain management programs, and I think one of the key success factors there that you have to consider is it truly global? So we've heard today from folks in different places around the world And I think we all agree that it's different. It looks different. Sustainability expectations, sustainability practices, sustainability activity looks different in China than it is in the US and Canada and Europe and other parts of the globe. It's important to understand that. So if we're teaching and developing a truly global supply chain program, we need to make sure that we expose students to these differences. Now, that doesn't mean we've got to make sure everybody walks away with a detailed understanding of what sustainability, sustainable supply chains in the U.S. look like versus China versus Europe. But we have to understand the differences. We have to understand what's important. We have to understand, if nothing else, and again, if you're talking about graduate education versus undergraduate education, it's going to look a little bit different. Undergraduate education, you've got students who really don't have any business experience to speak of. You're basically planting the seed so that way, whenever they get into whatever organization they're going to work for, they know what questions to ask. They know what to look for. They know, okay, I'm now working with a company whose primary suppliers are in India. I have to understand what sustainability looks like there. Or if your key partners are in countries where there's really no attention paid to sustainability whatsoever at all. Okay, does that impact your decisions? Do you need to do anything about it? So I think a success factor in a global supply chain management program that addresses sustainability has got to be global, and it has to recognize global differences. And the other thing too is I would say it's got to include some element of sustainability. We had the conversation earlier in terms of whether or not you're weaving it through multiple courses in the program, or you've got it offered as a standalone course. But I think if you've got a strong sustainability, strong supply chain program, you are teaching sustainability in some way, shape, or form.
Thank you, Scott. And then actually, I do want to hear whether Alan, you have anything to share, because I know, as you mentioned, your business school is making great effort on sustainability education. So how do you measure whether your effort is successful or not?
Very good question. Good question. We are trying to get better at measuring our impact, right? Yes. So impact on the students, impact on our community, Yangtze River Delta, et cetera. In terms of our, just this past year, last semester, we participated in the positive impact rating.
Right.
And according to our students, we are making an impact, and we were in the second highest ranking. So our students consider that we are transforming in terms of our sustainability education. So I would say that that is one of the ways that we would look for impact. We also have been in BSIS certified and have done the metrics, done the numbers, run the numbers in terms of the type of impact that we're making. In the future, I believe we'll try to do that in terms of sustainability.
Yeah, thank you. Alan, in fact, I think your school is ahead of most other schools. You're already paying special attention to sustainability. But the reason I asked the question is, just like companies that are embracing sustainability efforts, it's really difficult to quantify the impact, to quantify the return. So that I think that's a challenge all of us need it. As a researcher, as educator, we need to think about how to measure the impact. So I think we're getting close to the end. So what I would do the next is I'll let each of the 4 distinguished panelists give a conclusion remark, and then I'll turn it back to Chang. So I will go with you, Dr. Grau.
Thanks. I guess, the last thing that I'll point out is, I would strongly encourage, anybody who's engaged in a supply chain program to make sure that you're getting input and regularly touching base with some sort of an advisory board or external partners, so that way the curriculum that you're teaching is relevant. You're addressing what's what's important to the companies that are going to be hiring these employees, and even entrepreneurs who are really pushing the boundaries of what we need to be doing in sustainable supply chain management. But that connection to industry is critical, and it should be helping to shape your curriculum and the opportunities that you're providing for your students.
Thank you. Christian, anything final?
Yeah,
Yes.
so mine would be a bit more on, again, this is very personal philosophy on teaching sustainability. I really hope we can encourage teachers of sustainability to be more optimistic rather than pessimistic about the topic of sustainability. I recall I've seen like a few different examples of sustainability. They start the class typically with a video of very quote unquote very depressing video of pollution, and again, not to undermine that that's all true, right? But I think it's kind of a downer. So like it is true, it is very pollution and environmental degradation isn't a downer, right? And I think everybody already knows that. And I think if we can teach it at a little bit of a slightly more optimistic tone, and then the other thing is sort of maybe avoiding sort of an alarmist sort of type approach, but rather more, again, we're in the business school, so really trying to really link it back to value. What is the business value of all the tools that we're teaching? And yeah, and then lastly, also adding a little bit more of technicality into it will really gain a lot more credibility and respect.
Thank you. That's excellent points. Sherwood, any final remarks? Yes.
Well, I mean, I like the discussion about impact that you ended up right before this one, and to be able to do that, you have to have these big initiatives or this big, top to bottom, I would call it, approaches where you go and learn and or study in a certain research body or certain, you end prime, and you have that trickle down your organization, your programs are that way, and you get that. So that's of course great, but talking about Africa, of course, it's not typical the way I expect it to spread. So there's a huge burden, and capacity building and training the right caliber, whether it's for research or for teaching, remains to be on the top of, I guess, the initiatives I handle. However, on the positive note, and I fully agree with Christian on this one, and so again, thanks Scott for that point, but also on the positive note, we want to reinforce what's still good in the African ways of doing business. We have frugality. No one throws anything here, so right, you have circle economy, reusing. Your laptop is very useful when you're done 3 or 4 years from now. So build on those. Waste management, okay, there's ethics, there's religion, there's social solidarity, community-based solutions. So all these, again, are things that you want to bring to the table, reinforce it, but then of course address issues like governance, climate, fairness, equality, and then measures. So it's challenges are many. I think supply chain management, particularly, again, as I mentioned, upstream or downstream, allows us many entry points. So I think it's going to be up to schools and academics to find the right entry point for this sustainability lens and make it African as possible and make it global as possible, because again, Africa is expected to be one of the largest consumption markets. So we keep on looking at, you know, multi-tier supply chain sourcing, but come on, the last mile distribution and how much, you know, lack of efficiency is in that last mile is driving me particularly very uncomfortable. So how it works and how it's measured are two different things, and navigating that is the biggest challenge, I think, for us.
Thank you. And then Dr. Chen, any final words?
Yeah, thank you. And I think today all the panelists has a great and successful discussion on this sustainable supply chain management education. I do not have too much to say, but I think the most important thing for teach a great module on sustainable supply chain management in the business school is to collaborate with industries. So we need to make more in-depth industry engagement, which can provide valuable insights from different industries, and they also can help us to develop real-world examples, case studies, and networking opportunities for the students, not only for the executive students, but it also can quite helpful for the bachelor students. Meanwhile, I think we need more research in this area. As we said, the greenwashing problem is quite challenge in this area. Actually, I did some research in this field. So what I investigate is the supply chain transparency. So supply chain transparency is maybe a solution for the greenwashing, and we can do some international collaboration, like compare the Chinese data with the American data, and to compare the different cases in different countries and in different industries. And I think it should be quite interesting, not only for the research purpose, but also for the future education objectives. So thank you for this opportunity. Then we can share some research interests in the future steps. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much for all the panelists for your wonderful discussion and then the final remarks. And then I really enjoyed our conversation today. I'm sure Alan did that, was that too. So, and then 2 hours just flew by, and then Dean Graw has another meeting, so he had to leave early. So now I'll turn it back to Chang.
Thank you very much. I really found it very interesting, and you know, thanks to both you and Ellen and all the panelists for their great input. I learned a lot, not just about the how we teach it, but also the different perspectives we have from different countries, or even within the country, how, you know, we look at sustainability education very differently. And yes, I think I totally agree with Scott's point that it does look different depending where you are in the world and how they look at this. And I also really like the perspective that we should look at this as opportunity, not a crisis. I think that's it. I think the media pushes, you know, this a bit too much, is that this is a sustainability crisis and this is all negative. But it is really opportunity for us to learn and to go forward and look forward to the future. So like I said earlier, this is going to be, this video is going to be made available. We're going to put this online on our website, and we'll share it with as many people as we can. And I think everybody's going to learn from it. And I definitely will follow up with all the panelists to learn more, because you know, dig deeper and all the other things they brought up, because there's a lot of interesting topics that obviously we couldn't get into details on this webinar. But I look forward to talking to you all again. Thank you very much. And again, I've expressed my appreciation for all your hard work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.